Hi, I'm Ulrich von Tolstat.
I'm Alfred Bjornson.
Welcome to Von Tolstat Fight Club. Welcome back to Von Tolstat Fight Club. In this series, we explore techniques and principles based on Italian rapier fencing from the late 16th and early 17th centuries. Disclaimer, the techniques we teach here are not the only techniques out there, but they are extremely effective. This episode will kick off what will be a deep dive into the low lines of attack across multiple videos. Today's lesson will focus on how to gain your opponent's weapon and thrust in opposition on the low inside line. To start with, the low inside line is anything to the left of your sword below the arm or hilt, if you're right-handed. And before we dig any deeper, we need to establish something. Attacking the low lines can be very dangerous to you, and it's imperative that you gain an advantage and control your opponent's weapon in order to attack here safely. You either need to directly control your opponent's weapon with your sword or offhand to safely hit low, or you can bait a parry on the high line, then cavazione and step off the center as you thrust low. Their point is offline so you can more safely attack in this position. For today's technique, you will want to encounter your opponent with their sword extended towards you either in a neutral position or with the point aimed slightly downward, no lower than your upper thigh. If the opponent is aimed lower than that, there's no reason to hit them on the low lines, and an alternate technique will be used to address this in a future episode. When gaining and thrusting the low inside line in combat, it may flow something like this. I go to gain my opponent's blade on the high inside line. They drop their point to escape, so I go low and regain and thrust them on the low inside line. But while we're learning the technique, with a partner who is helping us learn the technique and not really resisting much, it looks more like this. And this is what you're aiming for today. For this technique, we will use a modified quarta guard, where our arm is extended similar to a terza position, but our hand is in a quarta position with the knuckles to the left if you are right-handed. We're going to find the blade outside of our ideal attack measure, much like we do with the high guard, but in reverse. Here's what I mean. With our point aimed down, we are going to stringere the blade by placing about 6 or 7 inches of our blade from the point past about 4 inches from our opponent's point. We will aim our point down under our opponent's blade instead of crossing over the top of it like with the high lines. We will cross the point under it. We are aimed out of presence, meaning our point is aimed slightly away from our opponent's body. This closes the line. We are not giving hard pressure, we are just placing the sword and aiming it. We can touch the opponent's blade, but we aren't pushing hard against it. My hand is firm as my opponent tries to attack the closed line, and if I need to close it further, I just adjust the point a little further offline to cross under his blade even more. From the stringere position, we will step to our ideal attack measure by moving the front foot, then the back foot, one step. In Italian sources, this is called misura larga, but we call it ideal attack measure because we can hit our opponent from this distance with the next step from our front foot. For more info on this measure, check out episode 3. As we move to ideal attack measure, we place the forte of our blade in roughly the same place that our tip was when we first stringeried the blade one step ago. This puts a much stronger portion of our blade on a much weaker portion of our opponent's blade, making it hard for them to resist our incoming threat. We are still crossed under our opponent's sword, but our hilt and quillins are situated so that our opponent cannot just raise their blade to hit us. So we've placed our opponent in a situation where they cannot pressure through just by pushing the weak part of their sword on the strong part of our sword, and they can't raise straight up to get out of the trap. The only option they have is to go around, which takes time. If they do try to go around, then I hit them in the tempo that they move their sword. But for learning the technique, let's say that our opponent does none of these responses. From our gain blade position, we can thrust our opponent in opposition. To do this, several things will happen roughly at the same time. We will step our right foot to thrust, sinking our weight as we do so. This places our hilt below our opponent's hilt in space, which is what we want, but we use our legs to accomplish this more than our arm. We will adjust our point back on line with our opponent. The tip hits the opponent either in the stomach, groin, hip, or thigh, just as the front foot lands. The target position depends a lot on your height and your opponent's height. Usually I aim for the closest and most convenient spot. Here it is again. I angle my fingers and wrist so that the point comes on line to my opponent, as I step and sink my weight down a little in order to push my opponent's sword down with my hilt. Notice the angle of my tip is mostly neutral now as I hit, not aiming excessively downward. Also note that when the foot lands, the point lands. I am not flinging my arm. My feet are doing the kill as I aim my sword. It's important to aim to the right side of their body. Don't go for the center. If you go for the center, you will lose the lock and make it easier for your opponent to parry. After I hit, I recover with the line closed the same way that I came in. From start to finish, the sequence looks like this. First, Stringery the low line. Second, step and gain the low line. Third, thrust in opposition. Fourth, recover back out of measure as you keep the line closed. Remember, we are not giving hard sideways pressure. This gives our opponent too much information, and if we press them, they can easily leave the bind and hit us as our point goes offline. To practice today's technique, have a partner stand in a neutral guard or with the point aimed slightly down. Stringery the blade toward the tip by placing more of your point past less of theirs, usually about 7 inches of yours past about 4 inches of theirs. Your point should be aimed out of presence and crossing under their blade to close the line. Step to ideal attack measure as you gain, replacing your point with your forte. Your hilt should not be touching their blade yet. Replace your forte on their double A about 6 inches from your hilt, past about 8 inches of their double A from the tip. The exact location can vary a bit. This is a general guideline. You can get a feel for it after you've done it enough. Your point is still out of presence, with the blade crossed under, with your hilt in a position that would stop your opponent from raising their sword directly up. If they try to press against your blade, they would be meeting your forte with their double A. Much like with the board, resistance is futile. They can escape this, but they have to take a tempo if they wish to do so, giving you a perfect opportunity to hit them if they try. From the gain position in ideal attack measure, practice the thrust in opposition. Adjust your tip to the opponent as you step and drop your weight so that your hilt presses the opponent's blade down. Make sure you do not fling or throw the arm. Hit them in the right side of their body, either in the stomach, hip, groin, or thigh. When you practice, it will probably take many repetitions to get it right. Don't get discouraged though. Once you understand how this works, you will have an invaluable tool in your arsenal. In the coming episodes, we will examine the thrust in opposition on the low outside line, as well as some other low line techniques and tactics. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time on Von Tolstat Fight Club.